Our first speaker is Halyna Mokrushyna. Halyna Mokrushyna is an independent scholar and academic who has written extensively about Ukraine, about Russia, and their very, very complex interrelationship, both during the time of the Soviet Union and since. So Halyna, please go ahead. Like all speakers, you have between 7 and 10 minutes. Please try to keep closer to 7 minutes so that we can have all the speakers, and then within a little over an hour, and then we will go to questions and answers. Go ahead, Halyna.
I will try. Thank you, Radhika, for inviting me. You know, for me, it wasn't a difficult decision because I went silent since February 24th, because like many of Russia, how should I say, not sympathizers, but people who understand Russia, it was a shock when Russia declared war on Ukraine. Even on the day when this military operation started, or the day before, I was giving an interview to the Radio Canada in French, and I was explaining to them, you know, the premises of I was hoping that the peaceful solutions could still be found, but alas, it didn't happen. So what I want maybe to talk about today is my understanding of the current situation as it unfolds, because you know, all of us, we follow these events and just the mind feels like exploding. But you know, the principal premises were there since, I would say, even since the fall of the Soviet Union, because I remember this. You know, I come from I lived in the Soviet Union, right? I'm a product of the Soviet Union. I'm a Soviet person. So I understand well, I mean, I hope that I understand what happened in my country since 1990. And the problem is that with this fall of the communist ideology, all of the post-Soviet space was left without any, you know, any orientation, moral, political. And of course, the other ideology that was present, ready to grab, was this national, you know, nationalism. Nationalism also can be of all sorts, you know, and I won't go into that, but if we look at Ukraine, and probably I will be speaking about Ukraine, Ukraine was in search of itself, and what they had this, and it's clear since the, you know, the split of Verkhovna Rada in so-called national communists and then communists, and then how they flipped to the nationalist side. So Ukraine was on this trajectory away from Russia since the early 90s. And these are the realities of life. And they were hoping, and they still hope, that, you know, the West will accept them. And despite, it just blows my mind when I see what Zelensky is saying and keeps saying. And unfortunately, they don't understand the very simple reality that Ukraine is bordering Russia and it's not going anywhere. And Ukrainians wanted, you know, they were like, the reality is that a lot of Western Ukrainians were working in Poland, where they became, you know, as Quebecois article was saying, that at some point Quebecers were white niggers of North America. Ukrainians became white niggers of Western Union, unfortunately, sorry, Western Europe, sorry, including Poland. And up to one, so for Ukraine, this is a probably existential question, what road to choose. And unfortunately, Ukraine didn't have very politically savvy leaders that could hold this very difficult act of balancing between Russia and the West. And even now, when I see what addresses the Zelensky records, I'm blown up by what I hear, because he keeps affirming that Ukraine is a democratic state. He, who is a Russian-speaking Ukrainian, whose grandfather fought in the Great Patriotic War and won that war, he keeps claiming that Ukraine is a democratic country. Well, I'm sorry, but Ukraine is not a democratic country. And even though when I discuss with my Ukrainian friends, they say, no, Russian is not forbidden. Russian is spoke in Ukraine. What are you talking about? Well, I'm sorry, but you know, laws of a country are laws. And this new language law that was adopted in 2019, I believe it explicitly bans Russian from all spheres of public life. And all of the national minorities, they have, you know, we are talking about Russian-speaking Ukrainians and ethnic Russians, we are talking about millions. And other ethnicities in Ukraine, we count them in maybe in tens of thousands. Their languages are protected and they have rights. And Russian-speaking minority, there is no law that could protect them. So yes, the reality is different, but still, laws reflect any country's values and any country's rules of common life, and I don't see it in Ukraine. And Ukrainians, they didn't talk that much about people dying in Donbass and about Luhansk and Donetsk being bombarded by the Ukrainian army and about civilians being killed. Now Ukrainian suffering is all over the world, and the whole world stays united. There are enormous efforts in Canada as we speak, charity gathering people. It's such a beautiful story. It's a villain, Putin, who attacked democratic Ukraine. Well, like I said, first of all, my problem with Ukraine is that it is not democratic. I'm sorry. The other issue that I wanted to say, when I was listening to Ukrainians, maybe you didn't see it, but, I was hearing people posting this appeal on social media to knock off the road signs with names of villages, because Russians, they are so stupid, they wouldn't be able to drive in tanks, they would get lost themselves near and would turn in circles. To me, just is another sign how blind, how they don't know, those who travel to Western Europe, they don't go to Russia, and they have no idea how far Russia has come since the fall of the Soviet Union. And this is not a country, a backward country that will fall under the sanctions. And Putin is not a crazy lunatic who is afraid of, dying, being killed, and he launched this offensive on the whole world. So it's what I see, because all my Ukrainian friends, they are right. They are anti-Russian, especially when after this military intervention. And I don't know where it will end. There are many questions. The questions that you raised, they are excellent questions, and I'm not very optimistic, because Ukrainians are good fighters and Russians are good fighters. Ukrainians they say they are defending their land, but they are much weaker militarily. And the reaction that I see from the West, they keep doing what they have been doing all these years, giving promises to Ukrainians, and now Ukrainians are learning under bombardments and under, in hiding in shelters, that the West will not help them. Because this is the reality, and what Zelensky does, it's an agony of I don't know, this, I call it, I don't know, it's naive. I don't even have terms how to qualify it, because he keeps signing these documents for the accelerated acceptance into the European Union. Before this panel, I was listening to his speech that he recorded towards the Europeans, and he was talking about Ukrainian Europe, and we are all Europeans. And it's the irony is that he started his speech by saying, this is, we say "Бажаємо здоров'я," as we say to each other. But this is an irony, because "Здравия желаем" comes from the Soviet and Russian army, which is "I wish you health," right? Why out of a sudden, Ukrainians would start saluting themselves? What my point is that, there is, I don't know why Ukrainians lack this wisdom to accept the duality of the Ukrainian nation, and it's a richness that Ukraine has. But somehow, I don't know, they looked upon the West, hoping that they would help them, because many of them, I have friends who wanted to travel to Europe. It's a totally legitimate, desire and work in Europe and receive European salaries and live within Europe. But what they did not understand, that the road to this Europe, to this true democracy, lies through acceptance of others and others' point of view. Because what happened in Ukraine after Euromaidan, they essentially silenced people who didn't agree with this, and here is the root of the problem. So I will stop right here, and maybe we will have time to discuss all of this during the question period.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.